just happy to be here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's keep our fingers crossed how many people we get here, huh? And I don't think I'll be able to see everybody's picture. They sort of circulate around. So if somebody sees somebody's hand up, I'm just going to let people know in advance that they should just speak up, because you may not be able to see them with the gallery of the size of people we have here. Morning, Carol.
Morning, Carol. Yeah, I think she's still making breakfast or something. That's the thing. I don't know if it's a bad habit or not, but when you before a meeting and you hear noises on Zoom, the mind can't help but wonder, what people are doing.
I was going to say, I'll be right over if she's making breakfast.
Exactly. Cindy, thank you so much for signing up to be a Discovery champion and contributing to the museum. That was very nice. Say teamwork makes the dream work.
That's right. Well, now y'all can say, hey, if the attorney will do it, y'all need to step up.
We've had pretty good response so far, so we're off to a great start.
That's great.
Yeah, so far so good.
Morning, Art.
Hey, Cindy, since we had discussion of our strategic plan yesterday, either today or Monday, I'll have to get Mary Zell to remind me, we'll send you our current strategic plan, which we are just a little over 3 years into.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Cindy, where are you physically?
I'm in Bon Air, Virginia, which is Chesterfield, right next to
Okay.
Richmond.
All right, I'm just up the road from you in Manikin Sabbath, so
Well, that's also God's country, so
yeah,
that's
that's what they
great.
say. They collect enough taxes for it to be God's country, I can tell you that.
That's for sure.
And the Museum of Natural History appreciates that portion of the tax collection to run our operations. Thank you. I gladly pay my bit.
Amen. I'm getting my money's worth in the state of Virginia.
That's what I always think of before I start grumbling, but I still grumble anyway.
Well, I pay a lot less than those people in Chesterfield across the river, that's for sure.
True, true.
Yeah. Right. Watching to see if that participant number goes up. It's
Yeah, I think historically during these Zoom meetings, people all kind of come in right at the
all right. Then
right at the wire.
I try not to get caught out with all the updates. If I haven't been on Zoom for a while, you'll sit there for 5 minutes while you're getting the updates, and that'll kind of hold things up, but not today.
Right.
That trial run yesterday helped.
Morning, Roberta. Good morning, Sherry.
Sorry?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Sherry.
Camera cover. Cheers.
Back at you.
Well, we certainly had a good turnout yesterday at the RNC committee meeting. That was quite a crowd.
Amen.
I think it's the most popular committee.
Well, shoot, I'll start thinking about entertainment and snacks.
I think you should at least get a raise, huh?
Although these darn remote meetings make all that kind of moot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. I realize it's difficult for some people to get to the meetings at the museum, and I appreciate that, but I think any time spent at the museum is a good thing. So that's just my opinion that no one asked for.
I think we'll give it a couple more minutes here.
Yeah, we need one more participant.
Yeah.
We have a quorum now.
Yes. Do we? Okay.
Art, you could be like me. I came to the museum.
Well, I wanted to be there, but thanks to FOIA, I'd have to be banished in a room by myself to actually participate in the meeting. And that just seemed silly to me. So
I'm in the car.
I stayed home. Well, there you go.
For future reference, 2 of y'all could have come in together, just not more than 2. And you'd still be considered to have a virtual meeting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Now, Cindy, does that mean like 2 people come here to the museum and everyone else join in? What if about the offsite people? What if 2 people shared the same coffee shop or something? So you have, as long as there's not 2 in one physical location.
As long as there's not more than 2 and one
Sorry, not
physical.
Ward 2. Yes. Gotcha.
Right, two can hang out anywhere.
And that's just the concern is with regards to interaction for trustees. It's not it's trustees and staff members.
No, it's just trustees.
Well, that's
I
what
mean,
I
you
thought.
can have 50s. Well, if y'all had it, but you can have 5 staff members and 2 trustees, and that's fine.
Well, okay. I'm glad you're here to ask because that wasn't the information I had early on, but it's okay because at noon today, when we're done, I'll very much appreciate being here instead of having a 3.5-hour drive ahead of me. So
Amen.
it's all relative.
And
I'm
where do
sorry,
you
Art.
reside?
I'll take the
sorry.
blame for that one, Art. I'm not a FOIA expert. I'm just pretending to be one.
No, that's okay. I would much rather be on the right side of FOIA, error, not make a mistake at all. So, if there was any doubt, I was happy to stay clear of it entirely. So next time I'll know and act accordingly.
Speaking of which, do y'all want some FOIA and conflict of interest training in November? I can make it as long or as short as you want.
It's
The 12
probably been 2
trustees.
years since the board has had an update. So, yeah, we can plug that into the agenda. You probably heard yesterday, Cindy, and we'll remind everyone again that we'll be meeting at the Frontier Culture Museum in Stanton.
Mhm.
So Mary Zell's already made hotel arrangements and so forth. So we've got the space set up over at the museum. So it should be a nice gathering.
Wonderful.
Couple of minutes, Joe, or what do you think?
And I was going to say, what's the date of the next meeting? Mary Zell,
November 18th.
November 18th. Thanks.
And Joe, technically,
Yeah.
those trainings should be annual, and your Attorney General's office attorney can always do those.
Okay. Well, let's start that off with the presentation in November. Yeah, Mark, there's actually a couple more people that, at least 1 or 2 more people who RSVP'd, but I don't see them yet. We have 10:05, so I think we're okay.
Great. So welcome, everybody. Lisa won't be with us today, so I'm going to take the benefit and appreciate the opportunity to call this meeting to order, and I'll tap my pen on the table here. First of all, I'd like to recognize Cindy Marquez from the AG's office, who's kindly joined us today. We've got a pretty full agenda, and so I'm going to move pretty quickly through that. And I appreciate that, as this is probably the first time we've had this many people on for quite a while on a call. Please do not be shy to speak up, because I can't fit all the people's pictures on my screen here. And so I will not necessarily see you if you want to speak, but feel free to interrupt as we move through if you have something you would like to contribute. So with that, I would appreciate, Mary Zell, if you would call the roll, as Nathan won't be with us today.
Thank you, Mark. Dr. Abdulbaki, Dr. Benzing, Ms. Burnett. Is Ms. Burnett?
There's 2 of them.
Anne. Sorry.
He's mute.
Mute, Dan.
I'm here. Sorry. Struggling with the mute button.
No worries. Ms. Jennifer Burnett. We're just doing attendance right now.
I'm here.
Perfect. Mr. Buss,
Here.
Ms. Carter, Mr. Cawthron, Dr. Evans,
Present.
Ms. Ito, Ms. Jordan,
Present.
Dr. Nash,
I'm here.
Mr. Quinones,
Here.
Mr. Sanford, Ms. Stowe,
Here.
and Ms. Woodson.
Here.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again. And we're going to move straight into our first point of action here today, which is to approve the minutes from our May 20th meeting. And I'd appreciate if someone could make a motion on that approval. If you don't have any comments or suggestions or changes you need to talk to us about.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Second,
Sure. Thank you very much. So we'll move that the minutes are now approved, and we'll move into the chair's report. And since this chair is only temporarily occupied today by me, I'm going to move through that pretty quickly. And first, I'd like to have the pleasure to introduce Bethany Fisher, who is our new museum experience manager. And Bethany joins us with lots of very, very interesting experience, and we'd love to hear from her. And she's with us, I think, down screen on my screen, but looking forward to hear from you, Bethany.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to introduce myself. I prepared some slides, so let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. All righty. Is everyone seeing that okay? Okay. So allow me to introduce myself. There's a picture of me as a little one. I come to you from Central Florida. I grew up there and attended University of Florida for my education. But most of my experience came after that. I spent 13 years working in the zoo field as a zoo educator. Did just about everything you can imagine going on in a large theme park education field. So everything from leading programs, designing programs, to becoming part of the kind of ad hoc team that would help develop new experiences for park guests, from helping to open up the zoo hospital so it was completely on display at all times. I worked with animal care. I did presentations. I did some of the local and regional media. Traveling with animals. I could tell you all kinds of stories at another time. And so, but after about 13 years of doing that, I took some time off during the pandemic to take care of my family, and then dove back in with some doing similar program development for local libraries before finding this opportunity. One of the joys of my experience with Busch Gardens is actually I've also been a freelance graphic designer ever since college. It's been something that I take great joy in doing, creating, whether it's posters and materials for a local theater company back in Florida, to helping small businesses develop logos and brand packages. I was able to design educational activities and write some of the signage for Busch Gardens experiences as well. And so I'm very honored and happy and excited to bring all of those skills to my role here as a museum experiences manager. You'll see kind of my stamp and some of my work on the publications that the museum will be putting out. I've already helped update our educational guide for educational programs this year. You'll see my work with the annual report. And other publications we'll be putting out. I am also helping design signs and experiences with the exhibits and festivals and whatever else Dr. Kuiper throws my way. So I'm very excited to be part of the team here at VMNH, and thank you all so much for this opportunity to join you all. I can't wait to be a part of developing exhibits for Waynesboro and everything else, all the other exciting projects we have coming up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bethany. This is this session that we have every board meeting to meet one of the staff is more and more interesting every month that we have it. And I really appreciate each of you and the time you spend preparing for these discussions. So appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
Next,
thanks,
we're go-
Bethany. Sorry, I just want to say I saw your picture there with Jack Hanna, which reminded
Yes.
me that I spent a long weekend with Jack Hanna many years ago when I was director of the insect zoo at the Natural History Museum, and he and his crew came out to film an episode of his TV program around the event, and he was a real character. I enjoyed being with him, and I know that he's inspired many generations of people in the zoo field. So that was a fun memory. Thanks for that, and welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I had the opportunity to work with Jack several times over the years, and lovely family, lovely man. What I always loved about Jack was that, like, what you see is what you get with him.
Yeah.
Like, there is no filter, there's no
Nope.
public persona and personal
Nope.
persona. He is exactly who he is. Just a very dear man.
Yep.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts from the group? All right. Next, we're going to go into our deep dive. And thank you again very much, Bethany.
Thank you all. You all have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Christy Deathridge is going to talk to us about the live animal program. And Christy, thank you very much once again.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. For our discussion on the live animal program, I do have a few slides that we're going to be sharing. Zach will be bringing that up shortly. And so we wanted to just highlight the live animal program because we have had such an increase in our numbers of live animals at the museum. So we're also working on a live animal policy. So we wanted to just highlight some things. And so the Animal Ambassador Program actually started in 2009 when we acquired Sheldon. And the next slide will feature Sheldon, our eastern painted turtle, and Corny, which was a corn snake. So we started with just these two individual animals back in 2009. They were actually donated from individual owners. We've added numerous other animals since then. We currently have around 35 species of live reptiles, amphibians, fish, and invertebrates at the museum. So the live animal policy is currently in review by the Research and Collections Committee, and I'm sure that will come up in discussion a little bit later. But this policy was created kind of as a guiding document because of our animal collection that has increased exponentially in the past few years. Next slide, please, Zach. You may have seen some of the live animals in the Education Center on the lower level at the museum. The leafcutter ant colony that accompanies a wonderful Smithsonian ant photography exhibit is housed there. It's constantly changing. It's fascinating to watch. The center and the classrooms are also home to several of the animals that are frequently used in programs. The animals are viewable by the public in a safe manner. They have accompanying exhibit text. And then next slide, please. Several of these animals also travel extensively with the Education Department's outreach programs. So they will visit schools, library systems, and other public venues. The live animal programs are definitely our most popular programs. Next slide, please. Live animals are also housed in the Research and Collections lab and office spaces. These animals are also used in programming such as our festivals, but these are not viewable by viewers on visitors on a daily basis. We ensure that the required Department of Wildlife Resources permits to exhibit wild animals are completed each year. We have a local certified veterinarian that provides wellness checks and then signs off on our annual permit. The leaf cutter ant colony requires a federal permit, and that is issued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. And it has actually recently been inspected and approved. Next slide, please. All staff that are responsible for animal care are trained in the proper methods for care, feeding, maintenance, and emergency procedures. The live animal collection relies on individual donations and grant funds to purchase all of the required food and supplies. The museum utilizes these live animals in our exhibits, education, and public programs as part of our mission. These live animal ambassadors are also an important role by helping to instill a sense of understanding and respect for creatures that are often misunderstood for a variety of reasons. So this is just a little highlight of our live animals at the museum. There are quite a few more that I just could not get images in there of, but if you are at the museum, I definitely make sure that you check out all of these wonderful animals. But thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christy. Before I finish up here, Lisa and I also, on behalf of the board, would like to congratulate the foundation on a really great year this year. And we're going to hear more about that from Ryan in a few minutes down the road here. So, and we'll also hear some words from Art about what Christy was talking about, the live animal, some processes that are being put in place for the live animal program. So we'll hear about that in a little bit of time. Next, we have the nominating committee report. Melanie, I'm not sure if you've got some things you want to talk to us about. Or did Melanie drop off? There we go.
So just wanted to make note that as of June 30th of next year, I'm sorry, yes, next year, 2024, that 3 board members will be completing terms, and Mary Zell's process of them if they want to be reappointed and if they want to continue to serve. And then they would have to consider the support of their local delegate. And those are Sherry Jordan, Roberto, and Carol.
Great. Any questions for Melanie? The next action we'll have is we'll be an announcement on our new slate of officers, and that doesn't come until February of next year. So, but any other questions on the nominating committee? Okay, thank you very much, Melanie. We're going to move now to the treasurer's report, and in Cord's absence, I believe we have the esteemed Mr. Martin.
Well, thank you very much. I'll do my best to try to match his energy. I don't know if I can copy it, but I certainly try my best. This year, happy to take the reins on this one. It was went gangbusters with revenue, admissions. You can hear a little bit more about that in the advancement report. Just a really solid year as far as the numbers coming in. Picked up some momentum coming back from the pandemic. Really excited to see it. Certainly wasn't forecasted. We took a conservative approach to the year, but moving forward through it, we were really excited to see those numbers rolling in. Personally, kind of what I brought up to Cord was, beyond admissions, beyond store revenue, classroom and workshops. It was a really strong number. And that is not something that we really advertise. It's a product that sells itself. We are full each and every single workshop and class that the education team puts on with Christy. I think people are just knocking down our door to get in, and just seeing that growth. And to me, it's more organic, which means people are excited about it, which means that momentum will continue to carry on, and it's a really, really exciting point to make. Really, no surprises as far as expenses go. Kind of one of those things with the contractual services and equipment. There was a bit of a wash there. We were able to pick up some equipment through contracts this year. So those numbers kind of washed out. Really excited. We have Masters of the Night coming up. I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but that speaks to the momentum we received from admissions. So, bringing in the dinosaur exhibit, that brings in more people, and then more people, more money, and then we can obviously fund those or work to help fund those, of course, with the help of grants from local, regional foundations and givers to bring those exhibits to the museum. So it's working. You can tell that, hopefully the flywheel effect is in full effect, and we can keep moving forward.
Any questions for Jonathan? Jonathan,
Mark?
can you just briefly tell us what happens to the positive balance at the end of the fiscal year? Just remind us all what happens to that.
Yes, so it's incredibly important that we do have those additional revenue streams coming through. So as it all kind of filters down, there is the special funds carryover. So as part of the reappropriation each year, we put in to have that money returned to us. So the O2, which is just a special revenues fund, saving you guys the Google, just that money can carry forward. So unlike our O1 budget, which is the general fund appropriation we receive from the legislature, the O2 money is money that carries forward year to year. Typically, we use it as not necessarily a safety net, but we try to keep at least 2 months of operation in that pot at all times. So
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Any other questions, comments?
Just a quick question. I since you've brought it up, is there any potential situation where that money would not come back to us?
Not that I'm aware of, knocking on wood. That would be probably a situation where you're looking at a global event. So World War III, not knocking on something to where the funds are siphoned to the federal government from the states.
Roberto, I'll just add to that from a historical perspective. About 8 or 10 years ago, there was a point where there was a lot of, teeth gnashing about overall state budget. And as I recall, we had to prepare a report on what we might have left over at the end of the year. But we worked with, this was back when we were in the Secretariat of Natural Resources, and we worked with the secretary because we were using that for a startup for our payroll and so forth. And they took care of us. But I do believe there were other agencies that had some good revenues and so forth, and they may have been tapped. I don't know that for a fact, but I think, if the stars align, you can have a situation where that is the case, where the state might procure some of these funds, but that would be under less than usual circumstances.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the concept of in the nonprofit world, restricted funds, right? When you get certain restricted funds, nobody else can touch them. They're for this specific purpose. So I don't know if technically in the statutes and yada, yada, if that money is quote unquote protected for our use. And if it's not, that may be something we should look into to see what piggy bank that could be in that definitely protects the money that the museum raised for museum purposes from being used for budgetary reasons other than the museum. If you can read between my lines.
I can read between your lines, unfortunately. And Ryan, please speak up here if you want to mention any specifics, but there are certain revenue flows that go right into the foundation. And as such, those are protected. There's no one that's going to be able to touch those. On top of that, wisely, a dozen years ago or so, the foundation did set up an emergency reserve. So it's not going to run the whole museum for very long, but we at least have that, plus the revenues that go into the foundation.
Yep, just protecting.
Yep.
Fantastic. And once again, yeah, it's always nice to present great numbers, Jonathan, but thank you. Great numbers still take a lot of work to account for and work with and budget. And so we appreciate all the efforts being spent on that. So thank you very much for that report. We'll now move on, barring any questions to date, to Joe's Executive Director report. Joe, I'll turn the whole thing over to you.
Thank you, Mark. As you saw with the financial report, end of fiscal year, we're very comfortable starting out the new fiscal year well. We, of course, have the not unprecedented situation that the Commonwealth's budget overall is not worked out. We were told basically to work off of last year's numbers. So the indication right now is that we should get level funding. If not with the state surplus, maybe we'll get some extra to account for some escalation and so forth. But nonetheless, we are comfortable. I'll feel a lot better knowing that those numbers are in hard black and white rather than being speculative at this point. But we'll just have to be patient. Speaking of end of fiscal year, it was a great year from a personnel standpoint. We, of course, brought on Dr. Kuhn and Marshall Boyd in herpetology, and Marshall also supports mammalogy. The Cultural Heritage Monitoring Lab, that grew in terms of its mission and the personnel. These are remote analysts, and I will say I'm very pleased. We do have a push in state government coming out of pandemic situations where people move back to offices and work together. We do have this unusual situation in that we have Army reservists and Naval reservists who are part of our team, but they work 100% remotely. But we get approval through the Secretary's office, and we've never gotten it. They understand, they get it, is what I'm saying. So that's been nice. You've heard from Bethany. We finished our first diversity intern. That technically spills over into this fiscal year. But from a personnel standpoint, it was really nice. I mean, we have more people working at the museum right now, and research and collections. I'd have to do the math, but it's definitely more than twice the size it was going back 10, 12 years ago. So it's great to have all of this energy. I'll also point out, just talking about 10 years ago, for those of you who read my evaluation, I know I brought this up, but that was a point. There was kind of a lot of struggle. We were kind of coming out of the building of the new building. There was debt within the foundation that was related to that construction. We were busy, finding ways to pay that off. And back then we had about a $2.6 million appropriation. And overall, through revenues and fundraising, we brought in about $200,000, or about 7% of our total operating budget. In 2023, we, of course, see a larger appropriation. So it'll always be nice if it's even bigger. But we have a $3.2 million appropriation, but we brought in over $600,000 in revenues, fundraising, programming, that sort of thing. And that represents over 16% of our budget. So what you're seeing is something, that we talked about when I first joined the museum, of this slow, steady growth in terms of being not just an institution with great impact, but great sustainable impact. And it also speaks to our AAM message, the reaccreditation from 2010, which said that we need to diversify our revenue and our revenue streams. And so are we there? Heck no. We'd like to see that 16% be 32% or more, right? But we're in a lot better shape. And as you'll hear in the advancement report shortly, we're finally getting to the point where the endowment is starting to mature, right? And so decisions are going to have to be made by the foundation about proper management of it. We had decided to wait till we reached a certain goal before doing anything different with it. So I just think that all puts us in a very comfortable situation. So all I can say is so far, so good. I'm just going to mention 3 other things. I think most of the museum operation will kind of come out in the committee meetings. And so I'll chime in where needed there. First of all, the foundation very kindly did budget a staff professional development fund, and a large chunk of it is already spoken for. So throughout this fiscal year, there are staff, including some that are online right now with us, that want to go to a conference or receive training. We're going to send our buildings and grounds team to 1 or 2 other museums where they'll basically shadow their counterparts there. to learn about operations and problem solving and everything there, and then share their experiences with those folks. So this is going to span a lot of different disciplines within the museum. So we're incredibly excited about that. Moving into two of our larger projects, Jonathan and I attended the Art and Architecture Review Board, and that was significant because by timing, the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion was up for final approval, and it wasn't even discussed. It was basically they just voted on to pass it. It is a simple project, of course, but it was just nice to see that we have the contractor in hand. And so now with this final approval, we're fully expecting them to show up at any point. And, I know that one of the challenges, of course, is to get a concrete subcontractor to commit to work, but apparently the contractor is working on that. The second project within the AARB review, of course, was VMNH Waynesboro. This was our first pass. And as I told the executive committee yesterday, it was a horrible meeting, but not for us, right? There were about, I don't know, 6 or 7 projects in front of us through UVA, VCU, Virginia Tech, and others. And they raked them all over the coals. And so I thought, oh God, I mean, this is, I can't believe I've been to ARB before and it was very superficial. This new group that they have was really diving into the weeds. So the most significant comment they had was to decide whether our blue panels on the front of the Waynesboro building should be above the green panels or if the green panels should be above the blue panels. So given that, I was happy that they locked in on that. And one of the reviewers actually frankly said he's an elderly fella, but he apparently was born and raised in Waynesboro. So he then began to wax poetic about his time there. So as such, we got great comments about it, and they understood just, without even it really being a part of the presentation, they understood the economic development value of this, which really ties in nicely with our governor's objectives. His very first objective or goal, his priority is accelerating the economy. So I think we fit into that real well. The last thing I'll point out, and I know everyone's been kind of touched by this, we started a new Discovery Champion program. So as you've heard us report in the past, our endowment is getting to the goal that the foundation first set. And as such, with our new Donor Snap software, so we've switched over from Blackbaud, which was, frankly said, very expensive, very cumbersome, and also by no fault of the staff, it's something where you're only using a small percentage of its capabilities. The staff have been trained and cross-trained in Donor Snap, which handles all of our donations and grants and online transactions and whatnot. It's very versatile and so forth. And so now we have set up with Discovery Champion. If you wish to, and I hope everyone does, I did, even Cindy has jumped in and become part of the family, that you can, as little as $1 a month, you can enter your credit card and you'll get pinged for $1 or $5 or $10 or $1,000, whatever you want to do, right? And that will go to our endowment as long as you would like to do that. So I know Mary Zell and Ryan had sent out the link recently. So I think it just came up in the chat as well. And so we'll remind everyone, we know everyone's busy, but it would be great if we got 100% participation from both boards to support this. So as you heard me say before, from the last institution I worked for, it was the trustees of the 1950s that really started to ramp up an endowment campaign. And when I left that institution in 2000, the endowment was 70% of a $10 million budget. So there's no reason that we can't do the same thing so that future generations of staff and trustees can look back on this moment and recognize that there are some significant actions that we're taking. So I'll just conclude by saying that, I think we're really healthy. We're very fortunate. We have a great mix of new staff and veterans that are working really well together. And so what I'll do before passing things over to Ryan so he can cover the advancement report, I just wonder if anyone has any questions or comments on the kind of general report that I provided.
Sounds great, Joe.
Thanks, Art. Appreciate it.
Keep up the good work. We're lucky to have you, and it's great to be getting positive news in consecutive quarterly meetings.
Yeah, really. Okay, well, good. Roberto.
Nope, just clapping.
Oh, shoot. I thought that was a hand raised. Yeah, me and icons. Okay, I'll go ahead and then hand things off to Ryan for advancement report.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks, everyone. So I want to keep things pretty big picture, but I'm happy to answer any questions. A lot of good stuff going on. Joe mentioned a few of the numbers. Just overall, I just want to point out that we have a really good working relationship with the foundation. We've got a lot of grants, partnerships, different donor prospects in the pipeline. So we're working on a variety of mission-based grants from education, research, exhibits, general operations, festivals, things like that. So it's very exciting. One of the upcoming grants that we're working on is it's in the letter of inquiry phase. It's moved to the full proposal phase. It's a community foundation grant to double our Museums for All support. So as you've heard several times, we've got strong support from Hooker Furnishings and Carter Bank and Trust. So that underwriting helps us provide free admission to the audiences that we're trying to serve. So we're working with the community foundation to hopefully double that. And then in the future, hopefully double that and just keep on going. So it's a great story, great program, great reception, both for the attendees, but also the donor and donor prospects. So we're very excited about that. That's just one example. We're working with curators on a variety of federal funding for different research projects, and that's always a privilege to be able to have a small part in that as well. So I think that lots of great momentum, lots of hopefully good stories coming up as well. Just want to point out on the advancement report, you've got a copy, of course, with lots of numbers, lots of charts, but just overall institutional earned revenue for fiscal year 2023 was up over fiscal year 2022. So combination of museum and foundation earned revenue is up over 8%, so 8.4% increase. And that's just the start. So this year, we're going to hopefully build on that, continue pushing in terms of a variety of revenue. I want to go on page 2 and look at the endowment. Just want to point that out. Joe talked about that. We've got continued growth, both in terms of new gifts and also strong investment growth. So we've got over the past 4 years, our average annual increase has been 12%, which we'd all love to have 12% a year. Very active management. So Stiefel Investments is our active manager for that. We get regular presentations at foundation board meetings. So they'll go into as much detail as we want to go into. We all nod our heads. It all sounds great, but no, in reality, it's very give and take, really daily interaction. They're a phone call away. So it's a really good relationship there as well. Just want to go to page 3 on the advancement report and talk about a few recent and upcoming events, programs, and activities. You've all heard about the festivals, obviously Reptile Festival, and then most recently Dino Festival. A huge turnout, over 4,200 visitors. We're very proud that of those 4,200, nearly 1,000 were Museums for All participants. So that program continues again to grow and be successful. Upcoming, we've got our Bones and Booze event. So that's going to be October 28th. We had the first one ever last year. Over 2,000 people attended. So it's a really fun, different format, Halloween theme. It's also a different time of day. So normally we have the 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. festivals. This is going to be more of an evening event. So it's going to be 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. So kind of nice to mix it up. Family-friendly event. So we're excited about that. On page 5 of the report, I just want to highlight the we dedicated a whole page to festival growth in fiscal year 2023. So you can see here a snapshot of the various numbers from different years. So fiscal year 2023 was a record in a few different ways. In terms of festival visitation, we exceeded the record set in 2019 for 21%. Revenue was up 33%. So festivals continue to be a strong draw for both visitation, fundraising, membership sales across the board, science outreach. So we're hopefully reaching folks in a way that's accessible, introducing different audiences to science in kind of a different format. Lastly, I just want to mention several projects we've got in either recently completed or in process. We've got our new membership brochures, thanks to Bethany's work on that. Working on the annual report. So we've got a pretty good draft going around. We've got a few elements that we're following up on. We're also going to do an updated version of our experts in the field. So you may remember that it's from a few years ago now, but it's basically a highlight of research featuring the curators, featuring the research, kind of why we exist and what we do and what's most important of all the things we do. So that's going to be out this fall. You'll get a copy of that as well. And then we're already looking at themes and format and different layout for the next Virginia Explorer. So the last one came out in January 2023. So we're looking again at early 2024 for that next publication. As far as exhibits, I just want to highlight a few have been mentioned. We've got, of course, our Dinosaur Discoveries exhibit currently open through January. Our next exhibit is Masters of the Night, which is a bat themed exhibit that'll open in February. And that'll be open through early 2025. So we're doing long-term planning, both in terms of scheduling, but also securing partnerships and support. We're already looking at a Smithsonian traveling exhibit for 2026. So we're already in talks. We're providing some environmental data and support information required for that, but we're kind of early on the list to get that. The really exciting thing about Smithsonian traveling exhibits is you have an opportunity to request donation of the exhibit to us once it stops traveling. So if you've been downstairs, of course, you've seen the ants exhibit. That was a former traveling Smithsonian exhibit. We were early on the list. We put our name in the hat and we actually got that donated to us. So we hope to have similar success with this next exhibit. And it's a water themed exhibit, which could be a good fit for VMNH Waynesboro in the future as well. So those are really big picture highlights, covered a lot of stuff. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Ryan, I just wanted to mention that in yesterday's executive committee meeting, we talked about the annual report, and thank you for all the work that's being done by everybody across the organization to put that together. Just so the board knows, there will be a 250-word summary of the board's comments for that report. I'm going to try to work to draft something. We're going to put it through the executive committee and then put it out to the full board. That should be coming out in the next, let's call it the next 2 weeks. And then give the board the chance to add their comments over a week or two, and then try to get this thing wrapped up by mid-September. Joe, does that work, or do we want to try for a quicker date? Mid-September. So I'll sort of do my best to get something out, and then we'll run it up the flagpole so everybody has a chance to put their 2 cents in. But this is it's a great opportunity for the board to take its position on the success of the museum. Any other questions regarding the advancement report or Joe's executive director report before we move on to the next area? Okay.
I have one real quick question, if I may. I was looking at the advancement report and appreciating the map that shows visitation, the origin of visitors and so forth. I was wondering, do you have a similar graphic for donors, where your donors are living?
No, the short answer is no, we don't. So we've got all that data. It's something we have not pulled that together. So that
might be something helpful. It would, sir. I was very curious about that, because as we think about pursuing support for the museum and what the Board of Trustees can do, it might be helpful for us to know where these donors are living and where they are not living. Thank you.
That's a great idea, Carol. And, as Ryan alluded, we do have the information. We took one stab at that, literally like a decade ago. And it was a pretty, simple look, but, it was actually eye-opening because of the spread. So, you get concentration close to the museum, but then the spread gets fainter as you move farther away. You would expect that, but still the reach at that point was underappreciated. So I think it's high time we go ahead and go back and look at that.
Would be interesting to overlay the two and see where some opportunities might be, where we have visitation and not necessarily contribution.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
That's what I was going to follow up to Carol's question. Is there any new partnerships or folks that we're targeting as potential donors this year?
That's a great question. We've got a variety of both individuals and corporate and foundations. So I'd love to share that with the board, maybe to get sort of what we try to do with the foundation board is, as we look at prospects, either generated by us or the foundation, try to assign if folks know anybody either directly or on their board or any kind of contacts. And if we don't have any contacts, that's fine. We'll still pursue it. But I would love to share that with the trustees.
Yeah, probably good to kind of overlay it over that mapping type suggestion that Carol was talking about too, for the state or even outside.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. One thing that it's very easy to forget, like for instance, in Charlottesville, Christie has 3 staffers. So I don't think any of our current board members are from Charlottesville. But all that said, there's no reason we couldn't think about trying to procure some corporate support for our outreach programs there, which would be pretty neat. I'll also say there's probably miscellaneous one-off opportunities that are just kind of hard to find unless you're really looking for them. One example fairly recently was the Elster Foundation, which it's a private foundation that does not take solicitations. They do not take proposals or anything. And I'm not even sure how it came about, but they actually named our paleontology lab when this building was first built. And then that is our only record of gift from them. So we did a little research. There's not a lot out there on this foundation, but there is a board that runs it. They have a 990. And so we got Gwen Mason, who's the field representative for Senator Kane out of the Roanoke office. And she just wrote them a letter of support. Hey, Elster Foundation, you might want to consider this organization that you funded before. They're doing great things. The paleontology program is still very active. And since then, we've gotten a couple of checks from them. It's not, over the top or anything, but that is something that we've provided to paleontology to support their work. So I think there's a lot of one-offs, both in terms of maybe what we call a lapsed donor, but then maybe some others that we've just never tapped, such as in Charlottesville.
Fantastic. Just a great conversation. Anybody else on the advancement issues? Great. So yesterday afternoon, we had the pleasure of having a very lively research and collections committee session, and under the artful direction of Dr. Evans. And so he's going to report on what we're up to in research and collections. So Art, please take it away.
Okay. Just to remind everybody, once again, the updated Research and Collections Committee report went out to all the trustees with the board packet. And this report includes the minutes from the May meeting, quarterly acquisitions report, and documents supporting the nomination of Dr. Overcast as research associate, and the current drafts of the museum's collections and live animal policies. And I want to thank Ben Williams, the museum science administrator, for pulling all this together as he does every quarter. As Mark mentioned, there were 21 people in attendance at yesterday's committee meeting, including both trustees and museum curatorial and administrative staff. Several action items were considered, including the May minutes and Dr. Overcast's appointment as research associate, both of which were approved unanimously by the committee. The quarterly acquisitions were approved, and documentation requiring the signatures of all the trustees on the committee will be circulated. The museum's collection policy was written by the Board of Trustees and was last reviewed in 2013. In 2022, the Research and Collections Committee and museum staff undertook a thorough review of the policies in this document and updated them to update them if necessary as part of the museum's bid for reaccreditation in 2025. The first review was completed by the committee in January of this year, and a second review, which was open to the entire board and select museum staff, was completed in July. The live animal policy is as Christy talked about earlier, is a new document that's necessitated by the wide use of select live animals in the museum's education programs and exhibits. And this policy lays out the museum's direction toward regards to the financial, physical, and human resources that are necessary to safely and humanely care for the animals in the museum's live animal program. I'd like to take a moment to thank the trustees on and outside the Research and Collections Committee who helped to review these documents and offered suggestions for their improvement. And I'm especially grateful to the museum staff who helped drive this process, including Doctors Moncrief and Hayden, as well as Jill Harris, Christy Dethridge, Liberty Hightower, Maddie Bassett, and Ryan Barber. The Research and Collections Committee has unanimously, has unanimously approved the updated museum's collections and live animal policies for adoption today by the full board. Unless otherwise noted, the documents included in the museum's reaccreditation packet will bear today's date, 12 August 2023. I don't know that if a vote is required. I think this was work that was assigned to the committee, and we've completed our work. So I just want to double check with you on that, Mark.
Yes, it is required.
Okay, well, that's why I asked. Gosh, Cindy, you look like you're in a witness protection program. So
sorry, Mark. I hope you don't mind that I jumped in.
That's no problem. No problem. All right, when you finish, we can take a vote.
Okay, great. And finally, the committee discussed the concept of establishing centers of excellence, which is one of the elements in the museum's strategic plan. 4 of the 5 museum curators were on hand to share their perspectives on this topic. The consensus among the curators was that the current lab-centered structure was more desirable for now, and that centers of excellence might evolve organically as research programs mature and funding opportunities become available. Everyone agreed that publicizing museum research was critical to inform and expand the number of stakeholders invested in the museum's success and growth to help garner legislative support. At some point, after more discussion among this body, the full board may want to consider modifying the goal of centers of excellence within the current strategic plan. Mark, I'll turn it over back to you. And if there's any questions, I'll do my best to address them. Thank you.
Great. So first of all, I just want the board to understand, for those, I'm sure everybody had a chance to look and review those documents, that these 2 policies will require not only all of the staff that they impact to sign them, but it will also require each board member to sign that they have read them. And so we'll be working to get those signatures as well as we move forward. I sincerely appreciate, as well as what Art said about all the work that went into it. It was a very arduous process, but it is incredibly complete. And will serve us well in reaccreditation as well. So can I have a motion to approve the collections and live animal policies, or I presume we can approve those as one, Cindy, or do we have to do them individually?
You can approve them as one.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve both the collections and live animal policies?
So moved. Okay.
Both of us are.
I'll second it then. I'll second Ann's motion.
Okay, and we'll take a vote. And does this have to be a recorded vote, Joe? Or Cindy?
Yes, a roll call. Mary Zell can facilitate that.
Mary Zell, will you help us out?
Will do. Dr. Abdul-Baki, Dr. Benzing. Did he drop off the call? I can see.
Nope.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Ann Burnett.
Aye.
Ms. Jennifer Burnett.
Aye.
Mr. Buss.
Aye.
Ms. Carter. Mr. Cothran. Dr. Evans.
Aye.
Ms. Ito. Ms. Jordan.
Aye.
Dr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Quinones.
Aye.
Mr. Sanford. Ms. Stowe.
Aye.
And Ms. Woodson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much, everyone. This is a huge win for the museum. So Okay, so with research and collections finished, we'll move on. Education and Public Programs Committee. Nathan is not with us today. Christy, do you want to make any comments here, or Joe, do you want to make any comments in this particular area?
Can I ask a question on collection?
Sure.
Before we? Yesterday it was a great meeting. It was very eye-opening. Tom asked a question yesterday, actually, and I don't want to speak for him, but as that question sat in my mind after the meeting, it raised a question in my mind in terms of collections and Virginia. I'm not as fluent in the full scope of our collections approval and deaccessioning, but the gist of the question was along the lines of, do Virginia artifacts and collections have priority over things that are not from Virginia, or to what effect that might be? So the issue was, obviously there's only limited space. Douglas Avenue, has particular uses. Artifacts come in all the time that don't necessarily have funding attached to them to protect them and keep them in perpetuity. And we're actually maintaining and collecting things that are from the Bureau of Land Management or federal artifacts that, we're being caretakers of. So I guess the net question is, was there any sort of priority in how we manage collections from the scope of something being for Virginia or not being from Virginia? And Tom, if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly.
No, you're fine. If I could set the stage for just a moment, please. I left that part of my report off, and I apologize for that. The end of our meeting, there was a discussion on the need to expand the museum's footprint to accommodate its growing collections, as all of the research departments are now filled nearly to capacity. And this will be an ongoing discussion that will highlight the needs of specific collections to identify the needs for expanded collections facilities, both on and off site, including the Douglas Avenue facility. And that's when Dr. Benzig had made the comment or raised the question as if there was a particular priority given to some specimens based on their origination in Virginia or not. And this is certainly something that's worth discussing in the future, because we're just at the tip of the iceberg here. But the short version is we're out of room. And in order to meet the museum's state mandate of maintaining research and collections, we need to seriously start addressing this issue. And this is a long-term discussion. I mean, just look at what it's taken just to get Waynesboro off the ground. We're talking about something potentially that is more intensive, but we have options. We have the Douglas Avenue facility coming on line, and it will probably come along line in stages, and that could present opportunities for certain aspects of collections to be kept there. Each collection has its own suite of environmental considerations in terms of when it's and how it's going to be used. So it's going to take some work to look at these things. And part of that equation is also looking at if Virginia material has priority, or if even that's a desirable criterion to consider acquisitions for the museum. So that's the background. I'm not trying to squelch conversation here. I just want to let you know that I neglected to bring that up, and my apologies.
No apologies necessary from my perspective. I was just raising the question in the context, as you said, of our limited storage space for collections, and how do we prioritize what we bring into the collection, and how do we prioritize those things that maybe we remove from the collection over time. And so it was just one way to think about the priorities. And I understood that there are specimens outside of Virginia that are very important to our mission, which is to interpret the natural heritage of Virginia. So not all species need, or items in the collection need to be from Virginia, as long as they bear on that mission. And I think it's a conversation that will continue in the Research and Collections Committee, and maybe we'll come back to the full board.
Yeah, this is one of the many reasons that I've opened the committee meetings doors to the curators, because they're the front line. in all this. And so it's very important to have their perspective and what they see as their needs to help support their research and collections. And so I was very gratified to see their participation in yesterday's meeting, and I hope that we can continue to have discussions with them for the months and years to come.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is obviously it was a joint with some of the strategic planning people, which definitely this needs to kind of overlap. And at a very base level, the answers Tom got were scientific answers. Somewhere along the way, there are going to be, could be, budgeting and political answers where people don't necessarily have as much priority in the scientific angle as some of us might. So when it comes down to dollars and cents and limited space, it's best for us to have answers and priorities rather than wait for something to happen. Because the other side of that could be positive. Someone could come up with some fabulous collection that we just can't, pass on. And then what do we do? If, you only have X amount of space and you need Y amount of space and budget, but we really want this, what would be the criteria by which we would make space for this wonderful new acquisition? So it's both a positive and protection from liability. So I didn't know, it sounds like we have a talking issue that would be great to delve into somewhere along the way, so that we have our priorities kind of at least thought through.
Well, this has been on a low burner discussion all along since I've been on the board. And I think now it needs to become a front burner discussion, just like in the early days of Waynesboro, where we consider this as potentially the next major museum initiative, because again, it impacts our ability to perform our state mandate, which is to involves research and collections.
If I could add a couple of things just for context. First of all, it's been our perspective when we've searched for new curators. We do our due diligence to ensure that the new curators research program can fit into Virginia. So that's one thing that we demand, and it's actually part of their annual review. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on Ariana because she's the new person, right? But she came to us with an initial focus at her last position on the snakes of Madagascar. Now, I'm not going to stop her from getting money to travel to Madagascar, but she needs to ensure that her work is going to translate over to the especially endemic fauna of Virginia. And that's what she's been doing. So, I like to it's always been my perspective as a day-to-day operator to provide that academic freedom. The second thing is I'll just point out, and I don't know if Ben has seen things differently. I don't know every specimen in the collection for sure, but I've been through lots of it. And from a space perspective, I would say the non-Virginia, if we were to deaccession all of the non-Virginia stuff, we would still be in the same boat, right? I think maybe the question here pertains to what do we do until we expand our collections holdings as far as prioritization, right? But from the standpoint of what we already have stored that are Montana or Wyoming dinosaurs, for example, or insects from the far southeast of the United States, things like that. If we were to remove those, it would not solve our problems as far as growth. The last thing I'll point out is that my prediction and what we're working towards is we have, of course, as reported on previously, we finished the roof and drainage at Douglas Avenue. The next step here very shortly, we're putting out an RFP to replace selected doors and windows to finally get the envelope sealed up. And then for approximately July 2024, we'll put out an RFP through Maintenance Reserve to upgrade the HVAC. And so we've got baseline data of what the environment looks like over at Douglas Avenue today. You don't want to put a lot over there. There are some kinds of specimens you can store just because it's out of the rain, but that's it. Once we have a better envelope, that might expand some. but it's going to be the HVAC that's going to be the big, big consideration. So I'm going to predict by the end of this strategic planning period, we will know when Douglas Avenue should be at a point of that we can store what kinds of specimens over there, and that would be the majority of them. There might be certain things that we want to restrict to careful monitoring here. So as far as our offsite storage for things like field jackets or collections that are rarely accessed, we should be able to greatly increase our capacity at that point.
Hey, just really quickly, Joe, just a suggestion. Having been a banker for a lot of HVAC companies, do not send the RFP out in July. Even if you want the work done, let's say in October, go ahead and send the RFP out in February, March. They're super. By the time May starts, and certainly June, July, they're slam busy, and you would be better served and probably get a better price, even if it's like, and I don't want this installed till October, to do the RFP when it isn't their busy season.
I don't predict that would be a problem. It's a great suggestion. I have to admit, in my review there, I did not consider that. I don't, because maintenance reserve is this rolling thing. I think we will be okay putting out an RFP early because we won't be paying for it till later. So as long as that doesn't violate any kind of, guardrails the state puts on our use of it, I would love to see that happen.
Just to circle back to Roberta's initial point, and maybe there's something we can do in terms of just reviewing the charter again, just to make sure if there's some language in there that allows us to expand beyond Virginia and how that might be read or could be read, and just making sure that it allows us to go outside the boundaries, let's say. I think you mentioned something to that regard yesterday, Joe. I don't know, but it's not something we have to solve today.
No.
I'm
I can provide that language. If you look at the Code of Virginia, our mission and some of our policies, and it's going to be up to you to interpret them, right? But I'll give the recommendation that I think my reading of it is all above board and has been above board. But we'll pull that together in kind of a succinct document that we can share in advance.
Okay.
My closing comment is going to be is trying to be positive as well, because the conversation kind of dipped into some interesting brainstorming on how we could think outside the box, and these were lots of ideas from the staff on how to potentially create revenue generating vehicles from the collections, and how we store and how we support retired researchers, and just creative uses of the space we have now that could potentially be revenue generating. So I as my business hat was saying, wow, this is great. You're presenting some problems, but you're also thinking all kinds of potential solutions that could be brought to bear that actually pay for the wonderful things we're trying to do. So that's just a closing comment.
Well, and just a quick reminder too, if you go to the agenda for Research and Collections Committee report, the museum's mission is right there on each and every agenda. And that's to interpret Virginia's natural heritage within a global context in ways that are relevant to all citizens of the Commonwealth. Having material and research outside of Virginia provides that global context. So it's in the code, it's in our other statutes that we go by. So, we're, as far as I'm concerned, that's not really an immediate issue.
Any other discussion on research and collections? Okay, thank you. In terms of education and public programs, Nathan not with us. Joe, do you have a recommendation of who might want to discuss this?
Well, first of all, we'll open it up to Christy, just to kind of give a state of education. And I'll jump in if there are other considerations.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the committee met on Thursday, and we discussed the number served for the quarter. And this is part of the education report that is in the board packet. So we spent some time looking at the numbers specifically for the reporting quarter. And those were numbers served, programs that were the end of the school year and then the start of the summer. And so with the start of the summer, we were working with several different county library systems for their summer reading program. So there was a variety of programming. We also spent some time looking at numbers program and numbers served for fiscal year. So we looked at the most recent fiscal year as well as the previous year, and numbers of programs as well as numbers served are on the rise. We discussed one of the program offerings is our Homeschool Science and Engineering Academy. And there is a large population of homeschool families locally and surrounding counties. So we've seen tremendous growth in our Homeschool Science and Engineering Academy, which we offer programs twice a month. They meet at the museum. And we have a variety of STEM, natural history related topics that we work on. We utilize the microscope lab for these sessions. We also work with the curators to introduce specimens and things like that to this group. And something that we have seen in the past year is the fact that several private academies in the area have approached us to mirror or basically duplicate our homeschool programs for their academies. And so we have started working with them on monthly programming as well. And so they are visiting the museum each month, participating in these programs. And so we've seen a real increase. And then we're able to utilize our exhibit spaces, the specimens, the microscope lab, all of these different things that these students may or may not be able to have the chance to do on their own. So we are gearing up for that right now. We actually have a homeschool open house next week to kind of kick off the upcoming school year. We also mentioned that our educators will be attending the VAST conference in the fall, VAST being the Virginia Association of Science Teachers. It actually falls November 16th through the 18th. So they will be attending the VAST conference during our next board meeting. But those were just a few highlights that we discussed Thursday. Thank you so much. If there's any questions.
Any questions for Christy?
Christy, how do you all set your fee structure for the programs?
Great question. So with our programming, with our homeschool Science and Engineering Academy, it's a very minimal fee. The students pay $7 per student per session. And so we continue that with the other private academies. We keep that fee structure for them. With our outreach programming, we have a different fee structure. And with our outreach, we also look at a sliding scale of if we are conducting more than one program, we offer a slight discount sliding scale for those. Great. And of course, I work with Ryan and others on grant opportunities to offer scholarships to those that may have some financial restrictions. So we already have in place for the upcoming school year some scholarship opportunities.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that. Thanks. I saw in the meetings minutes that the grant updates for this school year, and then again, it's just great to see all this additional funding coming in and helping out to support these programs and all the work that has to be done to make them happen. So, any other questions for Christy regarding education public programs, or for Joe?
I'll just point out that Christy and her team, it's more than just these, more formalized programs. I mean, they're a huge part of our festivals. We do target festivals from a business standpoint to make stuff that's family friendly, right? And so we're bringing in a lot of kids, and I don't know how they do it. I mean, these little ones, doing projects, and crafts and art and all kinds of things during these intensive festivals where we have just thousands of people kind of coming through. So it's more than what you're hearing that they contribute to the museum.
Can I just add one thing to the report too? In following up on our minutes from the last meeting, you'll remember that I decided to join the committee as part of the exhibits. For those that have been around for a while, we know that there was an exhibits ad hoc committee, and that kind of got rolled into education. And I'm glad that Bethany Fisher is also participating in that committee as well. And as we review exhibits, especially I'm thinking about Waynesboro, we want to make sure that they're meeting the educational goals for our teachers.
Fantastic. Great. Just a administrative note. I see a participant called admin. Is that Bill Kirby? Is that you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. I just wanted to recognize you and participating in the meeting, and glad to have you with us today. So thank you.
I need to be here so that I can tell the foundation board what you all are plotting.
Well, we appreciate it, Bill. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to facilities, which will lead us as well to Waynesboro under Tom's direction. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, we are plotting. So I'll just point the attention to those of us that are on the board. In your packet, you'll find minutes from the Facilities Committee meeting, as well as 3 sets of minutes from the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee meeting. So I'll do my best to summarize what's been happening since our last quarter. We did meet as a Facilities Committee earlier this month. The 2 items that are listed there are about the Maintenance Reserve projects and the Gene Adams Education Pavilion. So I'll switch order here because the topic of storage space for collections came up. Under Maintenance Reserve, of course, we're looking at the Douglas Avenue rehab, and we're hoping that that will be space that can be used for storage of our collections. We also learned from Joe that there's an opportunity for us to consider taking the Martinsville YMCA building, which is next door, and perhaps acquiring that and using maintenance reserve funds, asking for additional maintenance reserve funds, probably in order to manage that building if we see fit. The second item then is the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion. You know that this has been a project underway for quite a while, and we're very happy that we now have a contract in place, and we expect construction to begin September 1st, so very shortly here, and that we'll have an opening sometime early next year. And so that's a very exciting project that, of course, expands our educational facilities. Some of us that got a chance to see the Pelagwarnis, there'll be that 20-foot winged creature hanging in the education pavilion, and it'll be an opportunity to, engage our educational groups and programs much more broadly. So I guess I'll stop there and see if there are any questions about the Facilities Committee and its activities.
Yes. What's the time frame regarding the YMCA building? I mean, what happens? Is there anything that has to happen sooner than later?
I'll let Joe take that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much brand new. So just for a little bit of background, our local Harvest Foundation is providing the vast lion's share of building a 50,000 square foot, I believe, YMCA building, but it's going to be about a mile or so from here. So right next door, we have a building that fortunately, actually, it's got it's made of similar materials as portions of this building. It's got a large parking lot, multi-acre on the other side of the building, multi-acre parking lot plus green space, kind of mowed green space and so forth. So we see this as an opportunity along a number of lines. So they approached and said, hey, what's your interest in buying the building? And I said, well, none, I don't have any money, but I can ask the board, if they have some money. And I think I know the answer to that. So how do I put this? We can make a budget request, which honestly, I don't know that will be well received, to purchase further real estate for the museum, particularly since we have already previously and continue to invest in the Douglas Avenue facility. But I also think we have a community foundation that has more than enough capacity to not require the sale of that building, but the donation to us. On the other hand, and I wish Jonathan was kind enough to join us today for this meeting, but he and his wife are attending a large family function. And so I excused him after he gave his report. I knew he was eager to get back to that. So, but he's on the planning commission here in Martinsville, and he knows more about this stuff than I do. But there's also the consideration that there are a few projects in town where outside developers have outright purchased buildings and redeveloped them. Is the Y targeted for that? I have no idea. But nonetheless, we are in the preliminary phases. I still am looking to get a floor plan and so forth, and a building condition report regarding the YMCA. And I also were looking into ensuring that if we did have real estate donated to us, that property then automatically, and I want a reassurance of this, that property automatically gets factored into our maintenance reserve calculation. Number of square feet of building, number of square feet of parking, number of square feet of everything else, right? That all factors into what you get. I'm pretty certain, just from personal observation, that if we took it over, the first thing we'd have to do is to put a new membrane on the roof, which of course isn't cheap, right? And we can't do that if we don't use maintenance reserve. So that's where we stand right now. Everything's very preliminary, but I know, just talking to some of the curators, they would be eager to work out a plan where this can expand their programs. I'm thinking specifically cultural heritage monitoring. I'm also looking at the fact that there are already restrooms and showers built in, that we could create a residential situation for interns, visiting scientists, cultural heritage analysts, and so forth. And there's also some people who have approached me, and I like this idea of keeping part of it almost like a community center. If we were going to have it occupied, to make it a free resource for really, we're looking at children that might not have a place that's safe and ready to go after school until the parents get home from work and so forth. So this is all really preliminary. We don't have a roadmap generated yet. I don't know how the foundation will, when I say the foundation, the Harvest Foundation would respond if we're just like, we're not buying it, but we're happy to take it off your hands. Because if they don't do something with it, then basically they're going to be hanging their hat on a derelict building in a kind of one of the more prosperous areas, a place that's really been improving over the last decade. So I don't think they're going to find that at all desirable. Mark.
Yeah, Joe, I'm just going to have a little prerogative here. We have a pretty full agenda going forward for the rest of, and I'd like to sort of table this. Maybe we can bring it back up and for some further discussion in November, unless there's some deadline in between, because we've got a lot to accomplish. And
there is none.
Okay.
Well, if there's any way to quickly update us with an email as you have on other topics, if something should develop, that would be great.
I'll do so. Thank you.
Great. Tom, can we move on to Waynesboro? Yes. Sorry about that, Joe.
No worries, and I'll go ahead and move on and try to move quickly through our Waynesboro Advocacy Committee report. As I said, there are 3 sets of minutes in your packet, so you can look at the details there. We have been meeting monthly with the exception of July since our last quarterly meeting. We welcomed Leanne Binger to the board, or to the committee, because of Gene Smith's passing. She now represents the foundation, one of the members representing the foundation. We've completed the Art and Architectural Review Board review, which Joe mentioned went well compared to some other agencies. We've scheduled 4 meetings with Riggs Ward to get into exhibit design, and we've held our first meeting on geology and geoformation, talked a little bit about the lobby and some of the connections that we want to make to tell these stories inside the building. Our challenge now, and the time is now, is to convince the governor and our legislators that we be included in the biennium budget, the upcoming biennium budget. And I'm speaking directly to the trustees here, not the staff, because the staff can't advocate in this way. But we as trustees need to reach out to our legislators, need to write our governor and emphasize, because I think this will appeal to his priorities, that this project is about economic development for Waynesboro. Economic development because it's going to bring visitors to the city. It of course also has educational goals, and we recognize that as well. But I think if we can focus our message on the economics of it, and just to give you some short statistics here, and there's a lot more on the Waynesboro page on the museum's website, but it's a $25 million building with additional $6 billion towards exhibits, for a total project cost of $41 million. And that's been submitted to the Department of Budget. We're updating our economic feasibility study, which is about 10 years old. You'll find the 2013 version on the website, but we've asked Chimera to revisit that and give us current numbers so we can include those in our talking points. And you should have also received on July 20th an email with this call to action. So I encourage you to go back and look at that email, go to the links that are on the Waynesboro page for the museum, and pay attention to upcoming maybe letters that we will provide to you that you can use as a template if you wish, with talking points. And as I said, I can't emphasize this enough, but it's really incumbent upon all of us as trustees now to let our voices be heard, that this project is extremely important to the meeting the mission of the museum. So with that, I guess I'll close and ask for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom, and thank you for all the continuing work you're doing back and forth to Waynesboro on behalf of the museum and the community there. So we will be in touch with some suggested wording, I guess, Joe, as we move forward in some of these communications to the Board of Trustees, so that we're all speaking with a common voice that is speaking to the governor and the way he likes to think about making commitments for finances.
The economic impact study update should be completed by the end of the month.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. And we're going to move on now, unless there's any other questions for Tom, to strat planning. And Roberto, can you give us an update on that committee, please?
Yes, and it's very brief, actually. Unfortunately, due to family situations and load balancing with the people on the committee, we haven't actually met. We're in the process of adjusting that and moving forward with all the input we have received so far. The highest things on the menu, so to speak, right now is a task force that was created to start looking at and be ready to act as we move forward with reaccreditation, so that it's a separate committee, a sub-task force that has been identified, and will start working when Joe needs us to be. The other item you see there is the annual report, which has been mentioned before. Just as a reminder, there's kind of two flavors on this dish. There's one that will be our public annual report that you see from most museums and organizations that say all the wonderful things we have done and are doing and are progressing towards. The side plate is what we are required as a board to annually provide to the state and the governor of our actions and activities. This is also an opportunity for us as a reminder to be on the record of what we need and what we want and what we'd like to state. So my request to everyone in support of Mark's treatise that he needs to come up with, and then I am more than happy to help him with, if there are any particular points that we feel should be stressed for either flavor, please bring them to mind so that we can put the appropriate verbiage and fluff around it. Whether it's funding, whether it's priorities, whether it's accomplishments, this is our time to be on the record, and everyone's input is obviously appreciated. Any questions?
I have a question for Joe. Joe, we know that we have some restructuring in that committee. Does any of that activity and that we're on the strategic planning committee need to be voted on or in any way, or can that just happen in the background?
No, that's just submission of information, so we should be good.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, any other questions for Roberto? Okay, so in the next phase of our discussions today, we're going to go into a closed session. And so I'm going to go forward with the required discussion. Yes?
Just real fast, this is Cindy. I just wanted to relieve everybody's mind. Our discussion earlier regarding whether or not we could have items that were not Virginia. One of the purposes in the Code of Virginia for the Virginia Museum of Natural History is, quote, to investigate, preserve, and exhibit the various elements of natural history found in Virginia and other parts of the United States and the world. Okay, thank you, sir. Oh, thank you, Mark.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna move forward with what I have to read here in order for us to move into a closed session. And when I do that, it will also then become in the form of a motion, which will require a second and vote. So I'm going to move that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History enter closed session for the annual performance review of the Executive Director pursuant to the personnel exemption in Virginia Code 2.2-371 L subsection A subsection 1. This requires a motion. And so the motion is on the table. Can somebody give me a second?
A second.
All right, thank you. And now we need a vote on that. So Mary Zell, would you call the roll?
Yes, I can. Dr. Abdulabaki, Dr. Benzing,
Aye.
Ms. Ann Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Buss,
Aye.
Ms. Carter, Mr. Cothran, Dr. Evans,
Aye.
Ms. Ito, Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Dr. Nash,
Aye.
Mr. Quinones,
Aye.
Mr. Sanford, Ms. Stowe,
Aye.
and Ms. Woodson.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to request that any necessary staff and individuals to remain within the world out here, that we can come back and reconvene to close the meeting a little later. But at this point, we are asking that we get moved. We're going to be moved into a separate meeting room automatically. So I ask that anybody who is not a member of the Board of Trustees, although Bill and Cindy are welcome to remain with us. And so anyone who is not a member of the board, is not Cindy or Bill, we'd ask that you exit the meeting at this point, and we'll call back Joe via text when we're done. All right.
All right, yeah, I think Zach is doing the magic behind the scenes. You're all being moved. All right, so you all can chill out or whatever. So I'm just going to keep an eye on my phone. When Mark texts me, Zach, I guess what I'll do is I'll text you, Um,
Okay.
and then you'll move me, right? Is that the way it works?
So I guess my question is, are you going to the closed session yourself or,
I will be invited into the closed session before it goes public again.
okay, then yes, you'll let me know when that time comes and I'll send you to that breakout room.
Okay, and then when they're done with me, I'm already setting up a text for the 5 of you. And so at that point, you'll know to pay attention to your screen.
They will also be able to just push a button and return from the breakout room.
Do they know that?
If they've used Zoom before, they should be able to figure that out if they're familiar with Zoom.
Okay.
Which isn't a guarantee.
Right. Well, I'm comfortable with the idea of letting Zach handle things. That's okay, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's all taken care of. Yes, she's right. When they're done with closed session, they can either, they'll have the option to either leave the breakout room or leave the meeting altogether, which obviously they will want to choose the leave the breakout room. But yes, I can administer here if somebody leaves or needs to come back into the meeting. If anything happens, I can bring them back in. It's no issue whatsoever. And just so this, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, and so this group knows this portion of the meeting is still being streamed live on YouTube. The breakout session, the closed session is not.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I know you guys are technical savants and everything like that, but I am going to rely upon the idea that when I get texted, I'm going to let Zach know. And then he's going to move me. And then whenever I'm done, I'm just sending you guys a text. You can do it whatever you want.
Hi, Ann. Hello. And I see that you've joined again. You must have been cut off. Do you want to be resent to the closed session?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry. Electricity issues here. Power went off and on, so.
No problem at all. I'll send you right now.
Thanks.
Hey, Mark, you might be on mute.
On mute.
Thank you. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History convened an enclosed meeting on this date pursuant to the affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Virginia Code 2-23712 requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History hereby certifies that, and to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So now we require a roll call vote of all members. Mary Zell, can you help us with that, please?
Yes. Dr. Al-Blubaki, Dr. Benzing,
Aye.
Ms. Ann Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Jennifer Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Buss,
Aye.
Ms. Carter, Mr. Cothran, Dr. Evans,
Aye.
Ms. Ito, Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Dr. Nash,
Aye.
Mr. Quinones,
Aye.
Mr. Sanford, Ms. Stowe, and Ms. Woodson.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. Okay, so I have just one announcement in that regards. The next meeting, which as Joe had mentioned, will be at the Frontier Culture Museum on November 18th with a Friday night stay over involved, and more information on that will be forthcoming. Are there any other closing remarks or comments from any other individuals?
A quick announcement, on September 12th at 7 p.m. at the Wayne Theater, we'll be beginning our next series of science speakers, and it will be on fall raptor migration at Rockfish Gap Hawk Watch, Dr. Vic Laubach. There'll be an announcement on the Facebook page. And
Fantastic. Thank you one and all for your patience with me trying to do this from afar. And I appreciate the discussions we've had today, and to staff, thank you again for all the work that goes into putting together these meetings, and to the committee chairs and committee members as well. So thank you all very much, and shall see each other in November, if not sooner.
It's good. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
have a-
you.
yeah.